Welcome into the NFL Opening Line Report. Teddy Covers breaking it down. I am Drew Martin. Guys, welcome in. Please smash that like button, comment in the live chat and in the comments below. We'll be in there chiming in with you throughout the week, but ready to get you teed up for this week in the NFL. Teddy, without further ado, welcome on in. How you feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling all right. I thought I had a 3-0 yesterday, but I ended up with a 2-1. I'll take it. I'm not going to complain too much, but feeling better this Monday than I did last Monday. I'll tell you that. So
absolutely, right, man. And we got the doubleheader on Monday night. We got Tennessee and Miami. Miami 2.5, 37 being the total in Detroit. -4 hosting the Seahawks. 47 being the total. Anything quickly on the Monday Nighters before we get into this week's NFL OLR?
So let's talk about where the money's come from Monday night. We've seen Miami money with Huntley at QB. That's when the Dolphins, nobody wanted to see Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle again. So when McDaniel decided he was going to play, or announced he was going to play Huntley, who people remember from his relative success in Baltimore. We saw some Miami money. We also seen under money for that ball game. 37, even 37 juice to the under at a handful of books as well. So it's been Dolphins money and under money for that ball game. For what it's worth, Monday Night Football, you don't necessarily want to be betting with the money. In the other ball game, initially we saw a line move towards Seattle. Now we're seeing money for Detroit over the last, really since yesterday. That has something to do with the Seahawks injury report. They're missing, I think, 3 starters from their front 7 on defense. So that certainly could be an issue for Seattle tonight as a result. We've seen Detroit money. They're up to 4. They're even 4.5 right now. The total has actually been bet down off the opener to 47. Lions defense and Seahawks defense both have pretty good numbers for the first couple of weeks of the season. But biggest moves for today, under money, Miami, Tennessee, Miami money, and Detroit money over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, it's an interesting handicap really in both games, guys. I think Huntley playing the quarterback position for the Dolphins is a big-time handicap here. Maybe look towards his rushing props, Teddy. I was thinking towards the over. I mean, a condensed time to learn the playbook. He does have the athletic ability to extend plays. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a bunch of rushing attempts tonight.
Yeah, I got Miami pretty wrong last week. I thought they would go up to Seattle and compete, and they were non-competitive in defeat in that ball game. So I'm going to leave this one alone. In fact, I'm not in either action on either Monday Night Football game this evening. And it wasn't really that close. You know, it wasn't like a lean. I got really 2 games that I can make cases for both teams pretty easily. So I'm passing Monday Night Football tonight. So let's move on to Thursday.
Flipping the script here, guys. Getting the opening line report for week number 5 in the NFL going Thursday, October 3rd, 5:15 Pacific kickoff here. It's Tampa Bay and Atlanta, Teddy. We are seeing the Falcons -2. There is a -2 and a hook out there. 43 and a hook being the total. 301, 302 Bucs at Falcons to start us off here Thursday night.
Yeah, so we have buys this week. There's only 14 games to get through as opposed to the normal 16-week schedule. So we have a little bit of extra time. So fire those questions in, in the chat. We'll answer them if we have time at the end of the show, but we might have time today. With each of these games, I'm going to give you 4 sets of point spreads. The first is the look-ahead line. That's a bettable line on this game from last week. I use the Westgate Superbook numbers here in Las Vegas. Other books post them. I think the Westgate Super numbers are pretty good. So that's why I use them. Second line is my powering number after the games were played yesterday. Going into this week. It doesn't factor in situational issues. This is a pure powering, Team A minus Team B. We have the opener. That's the third number I'm going to give you. And then, of course, we have the current number. We talk about where the money has come. But the point of these 4 numbers is to give you an idea of how much this week's result has affected the broader betting marketplace and maybe to compare some of the numbers to what I have. So for this one, the look headline, Atlanta -3, 43.5. My powering number has Atlanta minus a half point. I abbreviate it Pick'em/1. So I've got Atlanta as a very short favorite in this game. Open 2.5 last night, total of 43. And we're seeing mostly 2s this morning, a little bit of over money, total up to 43.5. Atlanta, this is now the 3rd game of their 3-game homestand. They had been 0-2 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium before winning yesterday. And honestly, they were bailed out in that game. They found a way to win, or New Orleans found a way to lose. But Raheem Morris, I remember him as a head coach from Tampa and having a negative opinion about him. I mean, terrible clock management. They had a 6-point lead, less than 4 minutes to play, and they managed to run a drive where they ran 16 seconds off the clock. Allowed New Orleans plenty of time for the game-winning touchdown, but New Orleans left them a little bit too much time. And then they botched the last drive as well and were bailed out when Koo hit his career longest yards. 6.2 yards per play for Atlanta to 5.2 for New Orleans. But, of course, the Falcons won that game without scoring an offensive touchdown. Koo kicked 4 field goals, and they had a couple of plays that worked in their favor. Certainly the offensive line missing Drew Dahlman and Caleb McGarry. That's a concern. Meanwhile, the Bucs, they played a Philly team that really didn't show yesterday. Pre-bye, Philly was banged up, and they played like it was 24-0 by midway through the second quarter, and the rest of the game was essentially garbage time. At that point, 24-0, total yardage was Tampa 254, Philly 0. Worth noting, Philly off a loss, or Tampa off a loss, I should say. Quote, wanted to get the taste out of our mouth, the previous week's taste out of our mouth for sure. Started fast because the guys were just locked in. We came out with a hair on fire mentality. Everybody was locked in with the plan, whether or not we executed. That needs to be the case every week. That needs to be how we start. That being said, Todd Bowles tapped the brakes a little bit. We had a good quarter, and that's all it is. The season is 4 quarters. We got 3 more quarters to go, and we got to show up and play like that every quarter. Bowles always gives you those quotes that are just, yeah, we're chilling. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get there. Bottom line for this one, I don't see it getting a 3. I don't see it getting a pick 'em. I think these two teams power rated fairly evenly for most bettors. And we're probably looking at this game holding in this range between now and kickoff. So there's no urgency if you want to get involved with Tampa and Atlanta.
Great start here, Teddy. As we're flipping the script here, Sunday, October 6th, we do have the bye weeks with the Lions, the Titans, the Eagles, and the Chargers this week. Teddy went over it, a little less games, but it does start a little earlier than normal as we head on the other side of the pond here, Teddy, the London games. New York Jets, Minnesota, Vikings going at it. Vikings going off as the home team and -2.5, 41 being the total. So it's 9:30 a.m. Eastern here, kicking off in the continent of Europe. It's the Jets and the Vikings here, Teddy.
Yeah, big adjustment from what we saw in the look headline. And that has everything to do with how Aaron Rodgers looked yesterday and how he looked limping off the field. Look headline here was Jets -2.5, total 42. My powering number, pick 'em. And that was after downgrading the Jets because of the Rodgers situation. But the markets have downgraded them more than I did. Right now, we're seeing the opener 2.5, 41. And that 2.5 and 41 is basically sitting right where it was at the opener right now. So we haven't seen any live movement on this one because the markets want to hear something about Rodgers. Look, clients and I cashed with Denver yesterday. It was a flat spot. It was a rainy day, and the Jets sure played like it was a flat spot in a rainy day. They couldn't run the football. The Jets can't run the football. The offense had 3.5 yards per play. Hall and Allen combined for 18 carries, 28 yards. Defense only allowed 3.3 yards per play. They only give up 10 points and lost. The problem? Well, let's see. 13 penalties, 0 for 2 in the red zone, and Rodgers was sacked 5 times post-game. And again, it was a flat spot for the Jets. They're supposed to win the game. They had the drive to win the game at the end. They couldn't complete any passes to make it a shorter field goal. Ended up missing a 50-yarder. So they ended up with the straight-up loss. Now, Rodgers, after the game, quote, yeah, I'm banged up a little bit. Yeah, but I'm okay. He added, both legs are dealing with stuff. Quote, I think we were kind of killing ourselves. I can't say I had a spectacular games. I missed some throws. The weather sucked. But then again, so did some of my throws. It's only the 5th time in Rodgers' career that his offense failed to generate a touchdown. So if Rodgers, we could see rain in London, but certainly yesterday the Jets were flat and they played like it. That doesn't make them a bad team. It means they had a bad game, but the Rodgers injury is certainly affecting the markets. Box score is going to lie for the Viking games. They were up 28-0. And then the rest of the game, can't say necessarily was garbage time because Green Bay made things interesting, but when you have a 28-0 lead in an NFL game, they forced 4 turnovers. They had 3, a couple after halftime. This is, of course, the first 4-0 start for Minnesota since 2016. And all I'm telling you, the quotes I've been reading out of this Vikings locker room, They're good quotes, man. We had one last week. Sam Darnold. At the end of the day, we believe in each other more than anyone believes in us. You love that. Us against the world. Byron Murphy, one of the interceptions yesterday, who had one of the, I know what we have in this room is special. All that outside knows, I keep saying, stay off the bandwagon. Don't try to jump on it now. You can all stay over there, whatever you do. We're going to keep this thing going. Now, there is a red flag, in terms of, all right, we've seen Sam Darnold play well. Darnold threw a terrible pick yesterday. They're up 28-7. They're 2nd and 1 from the Green Bay 20. You cannot turn the ball over there. That helped Green Bay creep back into the game. So maybe some red flags from Darnold, but so far it's been all good things for Minnesota. That is a fat and happy and hungry team as they head to London. This line likely to move based on Aaron Rodgers' health. Read those practice reports, and you'll perhaps be able to get on the right side of it.
We'll get on to the 10 a.m. Pacific kicks up next. 453, 454. Carolina and Chicago here, Teddy. Battle of number one overall picks. At least the teams picking over the last 2 years in the NFL draft. Bears -4. There is a -3 in the hook out there. 42.5 being the total here, Teddy, from the Windy City, Soldier Field.
Look ahead line 3.5 and 41.5. My powering number is the Bears 6, for what it's worth. Markets open 3.5/4 last night, total of 43. There's still a split line now, more 4s than 3.5. Total has been bet down a little bit. So the market's moving towards my number of 6, and I'm a little bit surprised that I was that far off. And again, think it's not that big deal, 2.5 points, but most of the time my point spreads are going to be pretty close to the market. And this is one where, and I didn't think I have Carolina rated real low, or too low. I kind of liked them last week. And look, the Panthers box score against the Bengals, that was even. 24-24 first downs, 6.0 yards per play to 5.4. They had 155 rushing yards. Chuba Hubbard was a beast in that ballgame. The difference in the game was 2 4th-down stops that Cincinnati made against Carolina. Dave Canales, quote, "I'm encouraged that our football team continues to improve, but we got to a finish." That being said, Carolina did lose a pair of starting linebackers to injuries in the second half of that ballgame. Their -56-point margin through 4 games is the worst in the league. And this pass defense has been a real problem. They've allowed 9 touchdown passes in 4 games and more points than any other team in the league. Carolina still, maybe New England now is approaching Carolina at the very bottom of the league, but there's still not a ton of respect for the 30th, 31st, 32nd ranked team in the NFL. And yet this number isn't high because the markets don't trust Chicago. Look, DeAndre Swift won the game for them yesterday. He was brilliant. Gash plays on the ground, gash plays through the air. He'd been a non-factor the first couple of weeks. They were +2 in turnovers. They had 10 penalties, a lot of mistakes. But coming off a game in which he got picked off twice and lost a fumble, that's certainly a positive sign, but they were outgained by 0.7 yards per play by the Rams. 131 yards rushing, Matt Eberflus. We're addressing the issues that need to be addressed, Now it's running the football. We did a better job with that today. When you're building chemistry the first time together with a new and young quarterback, I think that's a part of growing. That's not a let's lay points with this team type of quote. Chicago off a win may not exactly be a positive expectation either. Caleb Williams, quote, "Obviously, we don't have turnovers. That's the most important thing. When you have a defense like us, you have a punter and kicker like we have, and you're not turning the ball over, it goes a long way. You're going to win a lot of games." That's a quote I like to hear from a rookie QB. That's a smart quote. That being said, Chicago's not a team that's going to attract a ton of betting attention, laying more than a field goal, even against a Carolina team that many bettors are looking to bet against.
Great breakdown, Teddy. We got 455, 456 up next. Baltimore and Cincinnati. We are seeing the Ravens -2 in the hook at most shops. There's a it's mostly 2.5. 51 being the total here, Teddy. So it's the Ravens at the Bengals from the Queen City.
A look headline, Baltimore -1.5, total of 47. My powering numbers are Ravens -2. There was no line yesterday because Baltimore was playing on Sunday night. And we're seeing right now in the markets, as you mentioned, pretty much 2.5s across the board. I'm not seeing signs it's immediately moving to 3, which means that it may not get there. Total, mostly 51s out there. Look, since he got the win yesterday, Zach Moss, quote, there was just a different type of urgency this week. Joe Burrow, quote, "We knew we had to come out and get one. There was really no other option than to figure out how to win this game, and we got it done against a Panthers team that's not very good." Of course, there's been, 155 teams to start 0-4 since the merger, and only the 92 Chargers were able to rebound and make the playoffs. So that sense of urgency was there for Cincy. It played out on the field. Do they see it again? I mean, the defense was gashed on the ground and gashed through the air again. As I mentioned a minute ago, that box score was really even. The difference in the game was 2 fourth down stops. So I've still got my concerns about Cincy. Very much so. Baltimore looked real good last night off a national TV win. From a line value standpoint, that could be something of a problem, obviously. Look ahead was 1.5. Cincy won, covered, saved their season, and now Baltimore's laying 2.5, which tells you, again, from a market value perspective, Baltimore's blowout win last night, not good for necessarily for bettors looking to back the Ravens this week from a value standpoint.
Teddy bringing up the 92 Chargers. What was that? Stan Humphries, Natron Means, I believe, back in the day. Good stuff, Teddy. We got Baltimore and Houston. Oh yeah. That's some of my first memories of the NFL is that Chargers team. We got Buffalo and Houston up next here, Teddy. -1 or pick'em is available. It's the Bills at most shops -1. 46.5 being the total. Bills playing in Houston here against the Texans.
Look headline, Buffalo -1, 46.5. My powering number, Buffalo -1.5. No line last night. The Bills were playing. And today, as you mentioned, we're seeing, I'm going to call it more Buffalo -1 than pick'ems here. So the markets, my powering look at all in the same range. And the Bills were blown out on Sunday Night Football. That was a no-show game, really, from the first play. Derrick Henry with an 87-yard touchdown run, untouched. It's not what we're used to seeing from Sean McDermott's teams, and Buffalo coming off a loss like that, that's going to get their attention. Now we're going to hear what an infinite number of Steph Diggs versus former team takes in this one. But Houston has no betting bandwagon right now. Okay. They dominated yesterday's game. 26-17 first down edge, plus 120 total yards. Yards per play, 6.4 to 5.4. But they muffed a punt. They blew endless scoring chances. And of course, the last play of the game was there was some drama. I thought it was a safety. The ref said somehow forward progress was stopped at the 2. Would have been a bad beat if you had the Jags and that would have happened. But the bottom line was Houston, again, they've yet to cover a point spread this year, even in victory. And their team from a betting bandwagon standpoint, they don't, when you're not covering numbers, you don't build that bandwagon. So last week, Houston made a ton of mistakes, including penalties. And D'Amico Ryans was talking about earlier last week. They said the penalties were addressed. So what they have here, 12 penalties, 93 yards. It cost them multiple scoring chances. Third straight week with 11 or more penalties. And they couldn't stop the run against the Jags. That to me is something of concern. Both Bigsby and Etienne combined 18 carries for 140 yards. If the Jags had an offense, Houston might have had a problem yesterday. And even without the Jags having an offense, they still needed a late score just to get the W. So good game. At some point, I think we'll see a better game than the one that Houston's been playing. They have a more talented roster than what we've seen so far. But if you've been backing the Texans like I did yesterday, it hasn't been real good for your bankroll thus far.
Teddy, you bring up the Jags. If they had an offense, they're actually the next team up, guys. 459, 460, 10 a.m. Pacific kick here. We get the Jaguars, -2.5 home favorites. There is some juice on that, too, and there's actually a -3 out there as well as we're talking Monday morning. 46.5 being the total. Feel like this is a who gets the better quarterback play, which is a tough handicap in itself. But Colts at Jaguars here, Teddy.
Sure. Look headline here, Jacksonville, 2.5. 45.5. My powering number, and again, I make no adjustments, 0.0 points between Flacco and Anthony Richardson. So to me, it doesn't matter which of the two plays for Indy. My number in the game is pick'em, although I've been downgrading Jacksonville pretty significantly. And yesterday's cover doesn't change my opinion about the Jags. The Jags were not the better team in that game. They got, it was a fortuitous cover if you had the Jags in the sense of Houston made mistakes, keeping Jacksonville in the game. That being said, so my number is only pick'em. That doesn't talk about the spot, and that's why this number is what it is. 2.5 at the opener last night, total of 46. And we're basically seeing that same number right now. There's a 3 that has popped up here in Las Vegas at a leading indicator book. Most of the books now 2.5 with juice. And, we don't know if it's going to be Richardson or Flacco yet. Richardson, after the game, said he's going to be okay. Flacco's 39 years old. He was fine, 16 to 26, 186, 2 touchdowns, no picks. It was a very even box score in their game against Pittsburgh, but the Steelers were minus 2 turnovers. This run defense for Indy that was awful the last 2 weeks, night and day different. After that Green Bay game, they shut down Najee Harris. They did play without 3 starters, 2 on the defense side of the football, and they're starting a center, which could be something of a concern here. But the rookie backup center, Tanner Bortolini was fine in that ball game, with the exception. And Anthony Richards got hurt, by the way. The place he got hurt on, 2 designed runs. Both on the same drive. After the second one, he was done for the game. So the Jaguars were gifted a TD on the first, or really it was the second drive, because they punted on the first drive, then Houston muffed the punt, and then they had a 10-yard touchdown or whatever it was. They had 13 points the rest of the game. They had 10 points last week versus Buffalo, 13 the week before versus Tampa, and 0 in the second half versus week 1 versus Miami. They outgained by 9 first downs, by 120 yards, by a full yards per play. This team's 0-4. Their offense is broken. Doug Peterson's seat is as hot as any in the NFL right now. All right. They were able to run the football yesterday. Again, 18 carries for $140 from Bigsby and Etienne, and they still couldn't win. They're now 0-9 in Trevor Lawrence's last 9 starts. Minus 49-point margin through 4 games. Only Carolina is worse. And they have injuries galore. More yesterday. Devin Lloyd is hurt on the defense side of the football. Josh Hines-Allen suffered a concussion during the game. Tyson Campbell at cornerback is on IR. The linebacker Foysiade Olokun is on IR. This defense got gashed by the Bills, and yesterday they got gashed by Houston, but Houston just had a bunch of gainers called back. But the markets are going to like the Jags here. They're at a winless team at home. The markets, the wise guys, will support them in this spot. And obviously, depending on who the quarterback is for Indy, I wouldn't be surprised if Flacco's the QB, if the markets like Flacco more than Richardson. But the bottom line is the reason the powering numbers and this point spread are different. It's all about the spot. Indy coming off a win, Jacksonville home and desperate.
Love the breakdown, Teddy. Great stats there. 0-9. I didn't realize that his last 9 starts. And the point differential, man, that's awful with the Jags. We got next game up, Miami and New England. 1 o'clock Eastern start here. Teddy, I'm noticing actually some sports books holding off on posting a number. You can understand why with the Dolphins playing tonight and the question marks they have on offense. But we are seeing the Dolphins -1 where it is available. 36.5 being the total. Dolphins playing Monday Night Football here at New England next week. So it's an AFC East battle. Dolphins at Patriots here, Teddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is widely available if you want to bet it now. There's a handful of books that haven't posted, but most have. Look ahead line here. New England -1, which is telling us where the markets have Miami right now. Total 36.5. My powering number comes pick 'em before the game tonight. Markets open pick/1, and we're looking at 36. And now they've pretty much moved mostly to -1. There is a -1.5. There is still a pick 'em out there, so there is some variance if you look at that WagerTalk live screen. And look, I mean, the Dolphins the last 2 weeks. We talk about Jacksonville's bad point differential. That comes from that one game, largely against Buffalo. The Dolphins have now played back-to-back awful games. Non-competitive defeat in Seattle, non-competitive defeat against Buffalo. Now, certainly my New England isn't Seattle, isn't as good as those teams. But if the Dolphins do not play well again on Monday Night Football, the markets, if we've already crashed on this team, we're going to see more of that. For the Patriots, I mean, now after yesterday's game, you can start to put New England right there with Carolina. It's a complete mismatch. All right. 3.5 yards per play for New England, 7.2 for San Fran. They allowed 10.7 yards per pass attempt and couldn't stop the run. Is this defense wearing down already? Jacoby Brissett took 6 sacks, had 38 dropbacks for a net of 143 yards. Antonio Gibson caught one 50-yard pass, but that was the only chunk play all day for New England. They had one other play longer than 13 yards. You want to hear what a vote of confidence does not sound like? It's what Jared Mayo said about Brissett after the game. Quote, "At this point, Jacoby's our starting quarterback. I haven't watched any film or anything like that. He's been a great leader. We got to watch the film. We got a long flight to go back and watch the film, and we're always evaluating every single position." That is not a vote of confidence in Jacoby Brissett. They can't put Derek May out there right now. They have offensive line cluster injuries. They were a problem heading into the San Fran game. And, oh, by the way, in that game, they lost the center, David Andrews, who's the mainstay of that line, and tackle Kaden Wallace. All left in the first half and didn't come back. So, and of course, the safety Kyle Duggar got hurt in that ballgame as well for New England. So the Patriots last 2 weeks have been pretty rough. This may be a step down in class, and that could help in that regard. But, again, the look headline saying New England was the favorite is telling us exactly what the markets are thinking about Miami right now.
Absolutely, Teddy. Guys, we got a promo code for the show. FBall30. Get you the 30-day all-access college football and NFL for a huge discount there, over $100 off. 30 days, all access. Teddy covers Drew Martin, any WagerTalk handicapper. You could use the coupon code FBall30 at checkout. 30-day all access, $100 off there, guys. WagerTalk.com. And also, remember, you don't only have to watch on YouTube. The show is available Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts. We got Pandora as well. So check it out there. And always like you tuning in on YouTube, though, chiming in the live chat and in the comments below. Feel free to ask any questions as we do have bye weeks. We should have some time to answer any questions. Moving down the list here, Teddy, 463, 464. Cleveland and Washington. We are seeing the Commanders minus 3-point home favorites, 44 being the total. So it's the Browns at Washington here, Teddy.
Let's put it this way. Yesterday's results affected these point spreads. Look ahead line, Washington -1, total 42.5. My powering number after the games, Washington -3. The markets opened 3.5, 43.5, and then got bet back down. The wise guy took a lot of the 3.5s out last night. We could see them again later in the week. I'm not sure the markets are real interested in. Look, the Cleveland will get support at plus 3.5 because they have the better defense. But again, the Browns were in many ways were awful yesterday. When you have 2 1-2 teams playing, at 1-3, you have a 13% chance to make the playoffs. At 2-2, more than a third of those teams make the playoffs. So huge game. 20, 25% difference in your chance to make the playoffs with a week 5, and then Cleveland couldn't do it. That was probably the best Deshaun Watson has looked all year in yesterday's game. His eyes were downfield the whole game. He had some nice throws. In fact, his interception hit an open Amari Cooper right between the numbers, but boom, bounced off and flipped into the air. He entered the game having been sacked a league-high 16 times. He was only taken down 3 times yesterday, despite the fact the offensive line was missing 4 starters in that ballgame. But the defense had a fumble return touchdown. Non-offensive scores, you cover, 80% of the time? Cleveland didn't. 1st and 10 from the Raiders 16, season on the line at the 2-minute warning. Couldn't convert. 10-0 first quarter lead. Didn't score another offensive point. Defense, I talked about this game during the week on WagerTalk today. I know I did a big game breakdown of it. I talked about it on I believe on Bet on It as well. Whatever. I was thinking, this is a Jim Schwartz defense game. Cleveland's defense got gashed by the run, by the Raiders. 5 different Raiders had a gain of 10 or more yards on the ground. And the Raiders came into the game with the worst defense in the league. The worst running game in the league, I should say. So you can see the markets crashing on Cleveland right now. The defense failing every bit as much as the offense at key times. That's a concern. We saw Watson and his offensive line getting into it. Jameis Winston having to intervene on the sideline. Things are not all right in Cleveland. That being said, you want to bet last week's games? No, we're betting this week's games, and we have a hungry, focused Cleveland team. And Washington, this might be a little fat and happy. They had the Monday Night Football win at Cincinnati, and they go out to Arizona. Look, that was impressive yesterday. All right. Jaden Daniels was impressed. Short week with travel off a huge win. He finishes 26 of 30, 233, didn't get sacked. The Commanders had 216 on the ground at 5.8 yards per carry. They went 9 of 12 on third downs and 1 of 1 on fourth. 6.7 yards per play on offense to 5-0 on 5.1 on defense. They're 3-0 since their opening day loss to 3-1 Tampa. No shame there. This is an offense that had scored 16 consecutive possessions. And yesterday they had a couple stop, but the punter, they've punted once in their last 3 games combined. Terry McLaurin after the game, quote, "Fun times right now." That's not a bet on quote, not even maybe.
Yeah, Teddy, you bring up Daniels, Kingsbury, that kind of mixture there. Any college football fans out there, it had the feeling that might work in the NFL, and we've seen it a little bit. I agree with your breakdown there, but we got 465, 466 up next. Flipping the script to the afternoon kickoffs. Las Vegas and Denver, 36.5 being the total, -2 in the hook. That's the Broncos hosting the Raiders here, division battle.
Yeah, look ahead line here, Denver -1.5, 38. My powering number, Denver -2, opened 2-37 last night. And mostly, there's still a prominent 2 out there, but it's mostly 2.5s. And under money continues to come down to 36.5 in many locations. So the Raiders, they're not necessarily trustworthy off a win. Remember what happened in the Baltimore game and then the Carolina debacle? That being said, a lot of positives for Vegas yesterday. They were the worst rushing team in the NFL coming in and finished 27 of 154 on the ground. I took out the 2 quarterback kneel downs to end the game. And they hadn't rushed for more than 55 yards in any game this season. Defense held Cleveland at 4.2 yards per play. They allowed a fumble return touchdown and still won and covered. And they were resilient. They were 10 down, 10-0 early and didn't allow another point on defense the whole game. The defense with a stand at the end to win. And that came with an injury report that was awful. A bunch of guys missing, including the best offensive player, Devontae Adams, their best defensive player, Max Crosby. And they still held the Browns to 241 total yards in that ball game. So, mixed feelings about the Raiders this week. I really do. I don't know that I trust them off a loss, off a win. But there are things to like about this team. Things to like about Denver, too, right now, even though the offense gained 3.3 yards per play. Bo Nix had -7 passing yards at halftime, which was, by the way, the fewest by a quarterback in the first half with multiple completions since 1978. And they won the game straight up. All right. They just won a game where Bo Nix gained 60 yards on 25 pass attempts. There was no downfield passing game whatsoever, except for Cortland Sutton catching a couple, including the only touchdown of the game. They were back east for 2 weeks. Now they're coming back home. The offense gained only 3.3 yards per play. Bo Nix, quote, "Usually these weather games turn into run the football games. That's what we did in the second half. It worked in our favor, and we didn't turn it over." But the defense, what we have to talk about for Denver, last 3 weeks, 13, 7, and 9 points allowed. That stop unit is looking pretty feisty, and that is at least some of the reason why we've seen Bronco money, and they won yesterday, but why we're seeing Bronco money a little bit more compared to the look-ahead line with Denver's defensive numbers starting to look pretty good.
Teddy, next up, we're heading to San Francisco for the Arizona Cardinals, visiting the San Francisco 49ers. Niners, -7, -7.5 it looks like the largest point spread for the Week 5 slate here. That's the Niners laying it at home, 50 being the total, Cardinals at 49ers.
Yeah, San Fran look-ahead line, -6.5, 48. My powering number is 8.5 on this ball game. The market's open 7.5, 49.5 last night, and that's mostly what we're seeing, 7.5. There are some 7s out there with juice if you want to back the Niners. Right now, I'm not convinced it's going to be there. There are problems in Arizona right now. The receiving, and I think the biggest problem might be the receiving core. Marvin Harrison Jr. got a rookie, got a second-year player, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch. That combo is not getting open. Kyler Murray's part of the problem, too. There was a 4th and 1 yesterday. It was baffling to me. 4th and 1. You've got the quarterback. Everyone's rushing. What do you got to do? There's only one thing you got to do. Get rid of the ball quickly. Make a quick decision and get it out of your hands. Murray's holding the ball. All the routes are quick hitter routes. They allowed 216 yards on the ground at 5.8 yards per carry. They allowed 9 of 12 third downs. They're outgained 5.1 yards per play to 6.7 They got beat down at home by a team that no one expects a lot from. Jonathan Gannon, quote, "We can't look like that because we didn't give our chance to win the game." Kyler Murray, quote, "Frustrated to get beat like that at home. I thought we had a good week of practice. We did not come out here and show it. It was not good enough all around." Arizona, at least for me, I crashed them in my power ratings this week. That's why we're looking at 8.5 for this game in my numbers compared to the 7.5 for the market. 49ers, look, the pass rush was there against New England. They had 6 sacks. It was a mismatch of a game, 7.2 yards per play on offense, 3.5 yards per play on defense. But still, 6 penalties, 2 turnovers, only 2 of 4 in the red zone. It wasn't a clean game for San Fran. Running backs don't matter. I'm telling you, McCaffrey's worth 0.0 yards to the spread. Jordan Mason now rushed for 100+ 3 times in 4 weeks, 123 yesterday. Listen to the quotes after the game. Trent Williams, quote, "We needed it. It was more than just going 2-2 on the season. It was something for the confidence." You don't expect San Fran to be a team that has their confidence shaken. Nick Bosa, quote, "It feels good to get a win. It's such a long year. If you look at it from an outsider perspective or looked online, you'd think the building's burning down after back-to-back losses. But I told the D-line guys in our meeting last night, we've lost some guys, but I haven't lost our confidence in this group." So those quotes to me say San Fran's not as elite as they've been in recent years. That quote says to me this team's got some self-doubt, and we haven't seen that from the 49ers in a long time. They might have the right opponent to get back on track against here. Arizona just hasn't looked good the last couple of weeks.
No, they sure haven't. Guys, this is the NFL opening line report, 10 a.m. Pacific, each and every Monday right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Smash that like button, comment below. Questions, fire away, guys. We should have some time at the end. Paul Blasley coming in from a very wet Essex, England. Welcome on in, Paul. Colin as well. David firing away a question we'll get to here, Teddy, as we got a couple more afternoon kicks, Monday nighter and Sunday nighter coming your way, guys. Green Bay and the LA Rams up next. 48 being the total, -3 in the hook. That is the Packers as the road favorite in Southern California, TC.
Sure. And again, I just want to talk about the 2 things we talked about earlier in the show. Number 1, you can find us everywhere. All right. Whatever podcast outlet you want. If you like this show, tell your friend you can download us to Spotify, whatever, all of them. Every major podcast outlet. And of course, take advantage of that promo code. What's it? FB100, and take $100 off. I say, don't buy a play, buy a package. We won in the NFL this week. I expect to continue winning in the NFL. Great time. Won our 5% big ticket in college football this week. I expect to make money for my clients. If you want to get on board, again, use that promo code FBALL30 to get that 30-day all football access pass. Now we're talking about Green Bay and LA. My power, look at line, Green Bay -3.5, 44.5. My powering number, Green Bay -3.5. The market's open 3.5 and 47 last night, and we're looking at 3.5 and 48 today. Rough start yesterday for the Packers. Obviously, anytime you make a QB change and the starter comes back, the exhale. They did come back after halftime because the defense forced a bunch of turnovers. Jordan Love, we fought the whole game, started making plays later, but too little, too late. This is a game, again, I say the box score lies because Minnesota led 28-0 and Green Bay had a comeback, but they were never in position to win the game. Matt LaFleur, quote, "This is a humbling league at times." Credit to them. They did more than we did to win the game. We got to bounce back from it. We've got to learn from it and get better. Boy, the Packers missed their, they buzzed the quarterbacks, Jair Alexander, Carrington Valentine, both hurt, and their absence was felt. Green Bay with some big injuries in the secondary. They had 4 turnovers in that ball game as well. And it's worth noting the rookie kicker, Braden Narvison, I haven't looked this morning. He's going to get cut today. He missed 2 field goals the first 3 games, missed 2 more in the first half yesterday. That ended up being the difference in the ball game. One would think Green Bay would be in the market for a kicker this week, which might concern you if you're laying 3.5 on the road. That said, I was really debating to crash the Rams yesterday in my power rating, and I went back and forth with my number for LA, and I decided, I trust Stafford and McVay a little bit too much to crash this team. But things are really hard offensively for the Rams right now. Their defense isn't all that good. They were -2 in turnovers yesterday. The defense didn't force any. The offense only had 1 touchdown and 4 red zone. 4 field goals, 1 touchdown is the wrong ratio for this team. Stafford was sacked 3 times. He had 1 interception, no touchdowns. And Sean McVay, these guys stayed in the fight. There were some good things, but really there was just some really uncharacteristic mistake we made as a team in regards to mental errors. We left people free, and you can't do that if you're going to consistently execute. Matthew Stafford, they sting when you lose. They're frustrating. I don't really want to sit here and talk to you guys. There's a lot of things that are about losses. They eat at us. But come Monday, time to move on and find a way to get a win next week. They're going to be still banged up. Offensive line injury, defensive injury, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, all these guys still hurt for LA. Like I said, I think it's I debated crashing the Rams, and I didn't. But if they lose this week, I think the markets will crash on the Rams, and it might well be in a pretty good Green Bay spot. LA doesn't look like they're this year's team.
Last afternoon kickoff here, 1:25 p.m. Pacific. New York Giants, Seattle Seahawks. We are seeing Seahawks -6, Teddy. 41.5 or 42 being the total. Of course, the Seahawks playing tonight in Monday Night Football and laying 6 next week here, Teddy, as the opening line hosting the Giants.
Yeah, look ahead line here, Seattle 6.5/42. My powering number prior to Monday Night Football, Seattle -6.5. The markets prior to Monday Night Football, -6/ -6.5, 42/41.5. So it's it's in this range from the look ahead, but nothing's happened yet. They haven't yet. The Giants managed all of 10 points against the Cowboys defense last week, and their best offensive weapon so far this season, Malik Neighbors, left the game. He was concussed on the next to last drive. The dinky-dunky passing game worked for Danny Dimes. Wan'Dale Robinson, Malik Neighbors, they had 29 targets, 23 catches, 186 yards between them. But when you're over 2 in the red zone and have 1.1 yards per rush on 24 attempts versus the NFL worst run defense coming into the game, it's hard to win. Giants then now failed to score a touchdown in both home games this season. Brian DeBall. I'd say we got to do a better job in the run game, and that starts with me. We tried a variety of things and couldn't really get much going. Daniel Jones, who's been solid the last couple of weeks. He has. Quote, we don't feel good about losing. We didn't do enough to win. We're frustrated. We're not discouraged. I think we're so confident in our team and what we can do well, but we don't feel good about this. I like that quote. We're frustrated. We're not discouraged. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Giants will have extra time to prepare. Significantly, they played on Thursday while the Seabags are playing on a short week after the Monday Night Football game in Detroit tonight.
Ooh, good point there. Like a double-edged sword in terms of schedule and time to prepare. Good stuff, Teddy. As we got the Sunday Nighter up next, 5:20 p.m. Pacific, 8:20 Eastern, Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers. We are seeing the Steelers -2 in the hook, home favorites, 42.5, 43 being the total. It's the Cowboys at the Steelers from the Steel City, TC.
Yeah, look at line here, Dallas -1, 42.5. My powering number, Pittsburgh -1. Markets open 2 and 42 last night. We're seeing over money and Steelers money, and that has something to do with the Cowboys injury report, and perhaps with Pittsburgh coming off of a loss. Justin Fields was good again yesterday, 9.2 yards per pass attempt. They couldn't run the football. Najee Harris only 13 carries for only 15 yards. They had a long of 5. It was a very even box score in Indy, but Pittsburgh had the 2 turnovers. And, of course, after the game, they whined about the penalties that they had suffered, which, frankly, I don't blame them for whining about it. They did. They came into the season with the number one. They came into the game with the number 1 ranked defense, and they allowed a season high in points in that ball game. And they had a chance to win at the end, but there was a botched snap where the center snapped the ball early. Justin Fields actually took the blame for it after the game, which I thought was a very mature move. Said it was my fault, even though I'm pretty sure it was the center's fault. But Fields says, I got to be ready. Doesn't matter if he threw it early. But that basically killed their last drive. Prior to yesterday's games, Pittsburgh had led the league. They held opponents, under 22% on third downs. Yesterday, Indy, 8 of 15 on third downs, including a pair of 3rd and 10 conversions when they went up 2 scores late in the game. So Pittsburgh off a bad game. Dallas isn't off a bad game, but they found a way to win. They only scored 15 points. Penalties were a problem again, 11 penalties for 89 yards. We have significant injury concerns. And I've seen 2 things. So Micah Parsons, I saw he was out 2 to 4 weeks, and then I just looked and I saw him questionable. DeMarcus Lawrence will be out. He's out 4 to 8 weeks. If Parsons and Lawrence are out, this is not a defense that I'm excited about. That's the two best players on defense. And then, you read some of the quotes after the game. CeeDee Lamb, you lose 2 in a row, you go through a phase that everyone's kind of uptight. It was good for us to come out 1-0 this week. It's one we needed. It's a division game. It put us in the right place. Dak Prescott, we got to change the narrative. That's what this game did, especially over a long weekend. It allows us a couple of days to get our mind right and to get our body right. It puts us at 2-2. Those aren't bet on quotes for next week, for what it's worth. I'm not surprised that Pittsburgh's taking the early money.
Guys, we got the Monday Nighter to end it, and then we'll answer some questions here. So fire away in the live chat, and we'll get to them. Any questions for TC, myself, Drew Martin. Check us both out, WagerTalk.com, premium picks with FBall30 at checkout to get that discount for the 30-day all access. The Monday Nighter here, Teddy, October 7th, New Orleans and Kansas City, 5:15 p.m. Pacific kick. 42 and a hook at most shops being the total. We are seeing -5. There is a -5.5 out there. That is the Chiefs as the home favorite hosting the Saints in Arrowhead.
Look ahead line, KC -6 and 46. My powering number, KC -7. The markets opened 5.5 last night, and that's where they're sitting. Mostly 5.5. So whatever, it's kind of split. A total 42.5 last night, 42.5 this morning. Saints probably should have won yesterday's game. Dennis Allen, quote, "Those are the kind of losses that rip your heart out. I know we have a good football team in that locker room. Now we have to play better. We can't spot a team 14 points, a good team, and expect to win those type of games." But there are major issues right now with the Saints when it comes to injuries. Their offensive line is banged up to hell. All right. Yesterday, all dinks and dunks on offense. They had one play of 20-plus yards. Remember those first couple of weeks when Carr was throwing those bombs downfield? Offensive line's not letting them do that right now. They won first downs, 25-14. They had 3 touchdowns and 4 red zone tries. They should have won the game, but when you allow 2 non-offensive touchdowns, it's a problem. And they had a botched punt return, fumble 6 from the 2-yard line. There was a pick 6. And then a huge pass interference penalty that bailed out the Falcons on the final drive. But I'll tell you what, before you put your money on New Orleans, look at this injury report. Taysom Hill got hurt yesterday. Willie Gay Jr. hurt yesterday. Demario Davis hurt. They're already missing Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz on the offensive line. There are concerns right now for Dennis Allen. And when it comes to head coaches who I trust when they're under pressure a little bit, Dennis Allen, not high on that list. All that being said, Kansas City, look, they're 4-0 and all 4 wins came down to the final possession, all 4 by a single score. They're probably due to lose one. Last year, 14 of 21 games were decided by a single score, 8 points or less. So add up, what are we talking about? 18 of their last 25 games have been decided by 8 points or less. This isn't a team that builds margins. And, look, Travis Kelce woke up yesterday. The rookie Xavier Worthy made the biggest play of the game with the 54-yard touchdown. The defense dominated. They allowed 4 first downs on the opening touchdown drive, and then just 8 first downs and 1 field goal the rest of the game. They were -2 turnovers and still won and covered against the closing number, 6.5. But Rashee Rice injury, that's not a small thing. And that's a potential season ender for him. Patrick Mahomes quote after the game, "We weren't playing good, but I think the best thing is no one talks about it. And they start to now, but our defense is really good. They know how to shut the door and keep us in games. Then they believe that the offense is going to find a way to score enough points at the end." I would not be surprised if we see under money come in for this. We've already seen some. I use the Westgate openers, and the Westgate hung a 46 as this total at the opener. 42.5 the prevailing number. We could see more under money between now and kickoff, depending on how bad the injury report is for KC and their receiving core, for New Orleans and their offensive line and skill position talent. There are a lot of concerns for the Saints offensively right now when it comes to injuries that could create. And then New Orleans, again, don't be fooled. They allowed 26 points. They allowed 4 field goals on the defensive side of the equation in yesterday's ballgame, which is pretty good.
Teddy, some time for some questions here, man. After the great breakdowns, some notable comments. Kevin M. writing in, I want it to be said, Teddy definitely called it with the Commanders possibly being good all the way back before the season during the show for the season wins. Absolutely. I remember that as well. You breaking it down on offense, Teddy, and that was definitely a good call. So throwing that one out there.
Thank you.
Cheers to you, TC. We got David asking, Teddy, have you ever had a week in which the numbers are so tight that you made no bets?
So I'm not just betting my numbers. My numbers are pure power rating. So there have been weeks where everything's right around my number. Absolutely. It's happened a bunch of times. But situational factors come into play. My number is a pure power rating, team A, team B. And I was trying to explain like the Jags, like why the look ahead line and my powering number are here, but the line is over here. Well, that's a situation that in theory favors Jacksonville a fair bit this week. So even when the powering numbers, there's nothing there, for most of the season, I don't expect a lot there from the powering numbers. I really don't. I expect my numbers to correlate generally with the markets. And when they don't, I question my numbers more than the market numbers. I do. For most teams, every once in a while, I'm like, this team's just being undervalued. The markets have this team wrong. I'm confident the markets have this team wrong. They have a misleading statistical profile or whatever. But more than half the bets I'm going to make in the NFL are situational, not power rating based. Morris, excellent question. Really, and it's such a good question. I don't know that I've been asked that before, and I've been asked everything. So, good question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for firing away here, guys, in the live chat and the comments below. If you are watching on replay, feel free to fire a question in the comments. It helps out the algorithm. Anything is welcome down there on YouTube, and we'll answer it on next week's show with the buys here in the NFL. We got Straight Up Bro on last week's show saying, hi, Teddy. In the Westgate Super Contest, do you wait to bet on key numbers to have more ties or get half points? Would you prefer a boom or bust scenario to try to home run throughout the season? Teddy, I like going on the half numbers because I feel like in contests, it's hard to get in the money, but when you do, it can be profitable. Therefore, you want to be taking more risk in contests. Therefore, go for like the wins rather than the ties. Anything in terms of, NFL contest wagering?
So I haven't been great at the contest, so I'm not the best guy to ask. And I'm not playing any of them this year, so I'm definitely the wrong guy to ask. Because part of the reason I stopped playing the contest is because I found myself thinking about 5 games all week, and that's not where your thought needs to be, Right. Or when it comes to Survivor, whatever. Survivor's a freaking lottery, Survivor's not something I take seriously. Survivor's something you fuck around with. But when it comes to like the circa millions or any of that kind of stuff, where it's 5 plays a week, I stopped doing it because I thought it was bad. It was bad for my job. And so be it. That said, the guys who are successful in these contests, and I know a bunch of them, they spend a lot of time focused on the key numbers 3 and 7. When the markets are at 2.5 and the contest line is 3, they'll always take the +3. When the markets are 3.5 and the contest line is 3, they'll always lay the -3. Same story with 6.5/7.5. So it's not so much about the push protection. It's about where the current number is in relation to where the contest number is. And they're looking to take value, particularly around the key numbers. So if the contest line is 2.5 and the markets are 3, they're going to lay 2.5. It's much more about, it's not about the concept of do I want a hook or do I want the land right on the number. It's about where is the current market that isn't reflecting the contest lines that are stale because they were put out earlier in the week. I hope that answers your question. It's the best I can answer it.
Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're laying down, Teddy. We got Sports Avenger saying, Teddy, something I noticed in the betting market are the misleading stats like you talk about. With that said, which book or source do you pay attention to most when lines come out?
None. There's no one book. I talk about the books that cater to pros and books that cater to Joes. I mean, look, I'm partial to Westgate for NFL numbers. I've used them my whole career. I'm partial to Circa for college football numbers. I'm in Vegas. Those are the books. And it's very important to note, of all the books to ignore their openers, DraftKings. Their openers are garbage. They're low limits. and they put them up just to put up, you'll see a DraftKings number and say, oh, that's the opener. That ain't the opener. All right. DraftKings is just putting up numbers because they're trying to generate as much action as they can. And of course, bettors who win have a hard time betting at DK. But whether you talk about the global books that attract a wise guy audience or the U.S. books that attract a wise guy audience, those are the numbers that I feel that are most important. And again, I use the Circa, Westgate, South Point, DK, and a couple of offshores that I track. But there's not one that I'm saying this is the one. No, that's as a group.
And Teddy, to your point, I'm surprised sportsbooks marketing-wise, you could see why DK does that. If I owned a sports book, I would throw out numbers early because it's good marketing. It gets people looking at your sports book, even if you're not taking high limits. So I don't blame them for doing it. It's just, it's a fine practice.
I don't blame them. Look, they're a company that's doing whatever they want to do. That's fine. I mean, it's not me to criticize it. It's a business decision, and it's probably a smart one. I'm with you. But in terms of recognize some books, like the point spread is well crafted. Other books are throwing up a number. DK is throwing up a number, so we don't take their opener seriously. It's not. All you have, the only advantage for DK is if you're in a state where you have it, you can bet them until they kick you out or cut your limits.
Absolutely, Teddy. One from 2 weeks ago. The last one here, guys, as we're up against it time-wise. Kyler throwing out. Does any non-QB in the NFL impact your numbers? Of course, QBs, you've talked about it, getting the number after it, but non-QBs affecting the odds in the NFL.
Yeah, I thought that was a great question, too. So obviously quarterbacks will affect them. There is not a running back in the league that affects the number. I talked about it today. Mason, you ever hear this Mason kid from San Fran? Well, all of a sudden he's Christian McCaffrey. You understand? No difference for running backs. For me, offensive line injuries absolutely affect the point spread. The broader market, only when you get a cluster, starting center, starting tackles are out. You're seeing a little of that with New Orleans. You're seeing a little of that with Dallas. Game-breaking receivers, absolutely. Justin Jefferson's worth something to the point spread. He's worth a half point or a point to the point spread. And we talk about teams that don't have a ton of weapons. They got one or two guys. Those injuries are as impactful as any. Shutdown cornerbacks are worth something to the point spread. Max Crosby's of the world, the great pass rushers are worth something to the point spread. But ain't none of these guys worth, a point at the most. At the most. It's only when they're clustered together that you see the real impact. When you have, they're missing their top playmaking receiver and three other receivers. They're missing, there's three starting linemen. And the backups are hurt. Those are when you start getting those kind of situations, then as they mount on each other, the cluster injuries can be worth a lot. Running back 0.0. Lutarski.
He's Teddy Covers. I'm Drew Martin. Guys, we got F-Ball 30 at checkout, 30-day all access, $100 off there. So check that out, WagerTalk.com, F-Ball 30. Teddy Covers, Drew Martin, up and available there. Huge shout out. Everybody chiming in, smashing that like button, comment below this week, guys. Teddy, anything else before we shut this down?
That was supposed to be an Animal House reference with the 0.0. I don't know if anyone got it. I don't know if I said it right. But yeah, that's a movie from before your time. But the people of my age will remember that movie. It was, John Belushi's finest moment. Okay, so thanks for watching. Take advantage of the promo code. If you like the show, tell your friends, watch us on YouTube, download us on any of the podcast networks, and have a great week. We'll see you guys next Monday.
Teddy, that's the Germans bombing Pearl Harbor, right? That movie? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
No, good. A funny one for sure. All right, guys, for Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Until then, cash those tickets.